how to finally put an end to that nonstop ringing in your ears. And here's the 7-day commitment I'm asking from you. Music. There's one question that haunts so many people who are trapped in this frustrating, exhausting battle. Will this incessant noise inside my head ever actually stop? Is this condition going to be a lifelong companion? Is there any real practical solution that can change my situation? Because when they finally gather the courage to see their family doctor or schedule an appointment with an ear specialist, the answer they get is usually vague and disheartening. The medical professional will often admit that the root cause of tinnitus remains a mystery, or they'll say there's no known cure. That kind of response drains hope, leaves people feeling helpless, and makes them believe they're stuck forever. But in today's presentation, I want to reveal something extremely significant, something that carries immense practical value, and honestly, something that the traditional healthcare system rarely, if ever, shares with patients. Let's begin with the most fundamental truth you need to grasp. That relentless sound, whether it's a piercing whistle, a low-frequency drone, a static hiss, or a persistent buzz, is not actually originating from your external ear canal, your middle ear cavity, or even the complex inner structures of your cochlea. Now, I'm not denying that past exposure to dangerously loud environments, like a blasting music festival you attended years ago, or the constant roar of industrial equipment from a previous workplace, can definitely trigger tinnitus. It's also a fact that some pharmaceutical drugs, from common painkillers to powerful prescription medications, can produce this condition as an unwanted side effect. But the crucial question that rarely gets asked is this: what if you've never used those drugs? What if you've never been around extreme noise levels? What if those well-known causes simply don't match your personal history? In that case, we have to dig much deeper, and that's exactly the direction I chose to explore. As I carefully went through the enormous number of comments left on my earlier videos that address this same issue, a very distinct and repeated pattern jumped out at me. There were multiple recurring themes, similar testimonies, and overlapping experiences that surfaced constantly from viewers all over the world. One person wrote, "I've had tinnitus for roughly 3 years now, but after only 14 days of following an intermittent fasting routine, where I fast for 17 hours and restrict my meals to a 7-hour period, while also adopting a low-carbohydrate diet, I realized that my ear ringing had nearly disappeared. It's basically gone." Then there was another remarkable story. "I dealt with tinnitus for 8 long, miserable years. I tried absolutely every approach: herbal remedies, acupuncture, homeopathy, everything you can think of. Nothing brought any relief until I switched to a ketogenic way of eating. I started just 5 days ago, and I'm shocked to report that my ringing is almost completely silent." And here's yet another. "1 year on the carnivore diet, which is about 97% animal-based foods plus only salt and water, and my tinnitus has vanished entirely." And another person shared, "I can clearly tell that my tinnitus gets much worse every time I eat sugar or drink caffeine. The link is obvious and immediate for me." These real-world stories acted like a roadmap, steering me toward a totally different branch of research, one that goes far beyond the limited scope of mainstream medicine. I became intensely curious about the hidden connection between blood sugar levels, the hormone insulin, and the sensitive nervous system that serves the inner ear. And what I uncovered was truly eye-opening. The very first thing you need to realize is this: when you go for a routine hearing checkup, the audiologist might confidently tell you that your hearing is perfectly fine, even when, in truth, it's anything but fine. Why? Because a typical standard hearing examination only checks for one basic thing: whether you can detect a simple beep at different frequencies. However, there are many other aspects of your hearing that are never, ever evaluated during that ordinary test. As a result, you can leave that examination with a normal result while secretly having a considerable degree of hearing loss. So, If you ever book a hearing test, it's extremely important that you specifically ask for a high-frequency test and a speech and noise test, because those assessments will give you a much more complete and honest picture of what's really happening inside your ears. Now let's get to the core insight I mentioned earlier, which tells us exactly where the real problem is hiding. That maddening, persistent ringing is not being created by your ear structures. It's actually being generated by your brain itself. Here's the mechanism behind it. When someone experiences hearing loss, they typically lose their ability to perceive a very specific, narrow frequency. In a desperate attempt to fill that gap, your brain starts generating a phantom noise, essentially raising its internal volume and turning up the amplifier to cover the missing sound. Your brain is literally inventing the ringing to compensate for what it can no longer hear. With that understanding, let's now shift to the various factors that set off this damaging process. When we look at the different possible triggers, including certain drugs, loud acoustic trauma, a viral illness, a bacterial infection, or even the potent chemicals used in chemotherapy, they all have one thing in common. They all damage the fragile nerve fibers inside the ear. But among all these potential causes, and please stay with me because I really need you to understand this, chronic high blood sugar slowly, quietly, and steadily cuts off the oxygen and nutrients to the tiny blood vessels that feed the extremely delicate nerves in the inner ear. Now, stay with me, because what I'm about to say also closely relates to a common complication of diabetes called peripheral neuropathy. In that condition, the nerves that run all the way down to your feet get damaged, causing symptoms like tingling, prickling, numbness, and burning. Well, here's the twist. The nerves inside your inner ear are also considered peripheral nerves. That's right. The same kind of wiring that goes to your toes also reaches up into your auditory system. Many people can go through life with seemingly normal blood sugar levels for years, sometimes for 4, 10, 15, 20, or even 25 years, without noticing any warning signs. And the hidden reason is because insulin, the tireless worker behind the scenes, is working excessively hard to clear that sugar from your bloodstream as soon as it enters. But here's the dangerous part. Having too much insulin circulating in your body directly damages the nervous system over time. In that same process, insulin resistance begins to develop, which gradually blocks the vital fuel supply to the nerves, particularly affecting those long, exposed peripheral pathways. And what makes the nerves in the inner ear particularly special is that they are incredibly hungry for energy. They demand a constant, generous flow of fuel to operate correctly. So, when you have hidden blood sugar problems and insulin resistance, these tiny nerves, especially those in the peripheral areas, become hyperactive and easily irritated. There are scientific studies, some going as far back as 2004, that found a strong link showing that between 84 and 90% of people with unexplained ringing had abnormally high insulin levels. Another study revealed that as many as 82% of tinnitus patients already had a pre-diabetic blood sugar condition. Yet another major study, which involved over 2 million people, concluded that diabetics are significantly more prone to tinnitus than non-diabetics. That particular research came out in 2025, and it followed thousands of participants over time, showing that the more sugary drinks they consumed, the higher their risk of developing ear ringing. This is exactly why, when people in the comments start implementing fasting, they are effectively reducing their insulin levels, which is precisely what brought them relief. If you've already been to your doctor, or if you're planning to go soon, and they focus only on your blood glucose numbers, always make sure they also test your fasting insulin level. Personally, I would never allow my fasting insulin to go above 7. Ideally, I would want it down around 5. I'm mentioning this because if you go to a clinic, they run their tests, and then they tell you everything looks normal, but your insulin came back at 22, don't accept that as okay. That is not a healthy number by any measure. And this is exactly why intermittent fasting works so well. This is why drastically cutting out carbohydrates produces such good results, because it's going to start bringing down that chronically high fasting insulin level. Once you begin lowering your blood sugar, you will effectively be restoring a steady, dependable fuel supply to those tiny blood vessels and the nervous system inside your inner ear. And this is precisely why I'm convinced that hearing loss and tinnitus are not simply a matter of being low in minerals or vitamins. That might be a small piece of the puzzle, but there's a much bigger, deeper metabolic issue lurking underneath that must be addressed. That said, there are two specific nutrients that can offer valuable support and speed up your progress. The first one is alpha-lipoic acid. This is an extremely powerful antioxidant that excels at cleaning up oxidative damage, which is essentially rust inside your body. In one clinical study, participants who took 600 milligrams of alpha-lipoic acid daily for 2 months experienced a significant drop in their ringing. The second nutrient I strongly recommend is benfotiamine. I've been using this special form of vitamin B1 for decades to successfully treat peripheral neuropathy, and its effectiveness is truly impressive. However, if a person doesn't also change their eating habits, the benfotiamine on its own doesn't work nearly as well. It might give a small amount of temporary relief, but the ringing tends to come back soon after. So the real solution lies in a two-step strategy. First, eliminate the underlying root cause, the metabolic dysfunction, and second, use these two supportive nutrients to genuinely repair and regenerate the injured nerve tissue. When it comes to the right dose of benfotiamine, I would suggest taking whatever the label recommends as a single serving and then multiply that by 4. So I would take 1 capsule 4 times throughout the day, spreading them out evenly to keep a steady level in your bloodstream. Along with that, I would take about 600 milligrams of alpha-lipoic acid to help you start reducing that irritating ear noise. Now, depending on how intense your tinnitus is and how many years you've been living with it, that will largely determine how long it takes before you notice real changes. Because if there's been extensive, long-term damage inside the ear, that damage won't reverse overnight. True healing takes time, and you have to be patient and allow your body the chance to recover. But with that in mind, I truly believe that the majority of people will start seeing positive results within the first 7 days. So, here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to rate, on a simple scale from 1 to 10, how strong your ear ringing feels at this very moment. Just pick a number that honestly reflects your current experience. Then, write that number down. Then, every single day, reassess that number for a full 7 days. This way, you can track your progress and watch that number gradually drop over time. But please, if you don't see major changes right at the end of those 7 days, don't get discouraged. Keep going and give it more time, because healing is a slow and steady process. If your internal biological environment is out of balance, every other system in your body will suffer. Think of it like a fish tank. If you poison the water, the fish will inevitably get sick. You could feed them the most expensive, high-quality food, and you could treat every symptom they show, but if the water stays contaminated, nothing will ever fully heal. The human body functions through a complex network of roughly 10 key signals, such as insulin, cortisol, inflammation, sleep quality, and gut health. Each and every one of these signals plays a huge role in how you feel day to day. But there is always one particular signal that is more broken, more out of whack than all the others. And until you identify and fix that main signal, everything else remains stuck, no matter what else you try. That's exactly why I created a free, quick 2-minute quiz that helps you discover that specific signal for your own body. It tells you which of the 10 core signals is currently holding you back the most. Click the link in the description below, take the quiz and stop all the aimless guessing. The other thing I want to mention is why you might notice this ringing more at night than during the day. And this largely comes down to how your body handles its energy stores. As soon as you start cutting back on carbohydrates, your body is forced to tap into its reserve fuel, which is your stored fat. When that happens, your body starts switching over to a different energy source called ketones. This metabolic shift is incredibly powerful, and that's why I believe many of you watching this, if you fully commit to this plan, will see improvements even sooner than the 7-day mark. So, the big question remains, is this a permanent fix? Is this something you'll have to tolerate for the rest of your life? Absolutely not. I fully believe you can overcome this, but I strongly encourage you to put this experiment into practice with genuine effort. Stick with it for at least 2 to 3 full weeks, okay? Or even longer if you can manage it, because I am genuinely convinced that this is the approach that will turn things around for you based on all the scientific evidence and real-life success stories I've shared with you today. So, if you're serious about taking this to the next level and dramatically speeding up the entire healing process, then we need to talk about prolonged fasting, all right? That means extending your intermittent fasting window into a much longer period to trigger faster, deeper changes in your body. And for all that detailed guidance, you should definitely watch this video right here, which goes deep into prolonged fasting and how to push your results even further. I've placed it right here for you. Go ahead and check it out.